Well, I had an experience when I was quite young. Boy from Christchurch, 9 years old. Like everybody else, I grew up at home and Mum cooked, especially back then, because it was the 60s, and at that stage I think there were only 6 restaurants in New Zealand and they probably weren't open that night. I had the opportunity to go and join my father on a tour around the North Island. Went to the Hotel Intercontinental, to the very top floor of that, which was this huge buffet looking out over the harbour. It was that sort of luxury just of so much everywhere, and that made a huge effect on me, this sort of display of food. I went into a sort of a state of shock. And I sort of came to my senses when we were down at the Waikato Caves, THC. White linen, the silver on the table, the waitresses all with starch stuff and a lot of fuss and bother. It was all sort of serving stuff off this sort of thing to the table. On top of that, I got served something which we had at home, which was schnitzel, but this thing had with it this brown sauce. It was something just so ephemeral, or whatever you want to say fancy about it. It was just tasted like nothing else. It propelled me into a life of food. And so this whole episode to me is a way to recapture some of those old sort of hotel style dishes that have a lot of sort of empty sort of theatre in them. They're just, you know, there's no particular point to it other than just to have a bit of fun. And also it's a retro sort of fashion thing where you can just enjoy stuff that you don't get to enjoy anymore, because there's not a whole bunch of Thai spices fighting each other and everything. It was just plain old cooking. Tonight, inspired by my childhood memories, we look at THC hotels of yesteryear. We're going to Aoraki Mt Cook for oyster mornay. We're deep frying schnitzel with a schnitzel expert. And to finish, we're cooking that most Kiwi of all desserts, crepes. The THC was a government hotel chain set up in 1956. There were heaps of tourists coming to New Zealand, and we were keen to impress them with a swanky new hotel chain. Because not many New Zealanders became chefs in the 60s, they all had to be imported from England and Europe. Joss Wellman being one of them. He was 22 when he arrived, and his CV already boasted stints cooking for Brezhnev, Princess Diana, Spike Milligan, and best of all, Captain Steubing on the Love Boat. When he arrived to work at the Waitangi THC, he was in for a bit of a culture shock.
When I first came out to New Zealand, it was very much, for me at least, going back in time. I was used to a big modern run-through in the States and in Europe, etc. And then I come to New Zealand and we're like 20 years behind the rest of the world.
Right, so here are a couple of entrees from that old school style you prepared for me. Talk me through them.
Okay, well, first of all, of course, we've got our classical shrimp cocktail. I can't understand why it's not on more menus. You know, I'm sure there's a huge demand out there for it. You know, just very, very simply, lettuce, shrimps, or prawns, a cocktail sauce on the top, served with a wedge of lemon. It doesn't come any more basic than that. And I mean, that's how things used to be done in 1982. I mean, you look at it now and you think, whoa, how could I have ever done something like that?
Joss made a beautiful shrimp cocktail, and it was on every menu back then. It was on a lot of THC menus, but well, it's not really cooking for me. I want something where there's a bit of pans and something involved. Thawing and squirting isn't cooking. So we come to the Hermitage here. It's been here since 1884. Well, not exactly like this, of course. In 1884, it was just a cob cottage with a puddle out front. Then they built a slightly bigger version and a slightly bigger version, and that became a THC in 1956. It burnt down in 1957. Then they built it again in 1958. And then they've kind of kept adding to it and making it flasher and flasher, and now it's an enormous great thing full of foreigners. Lorenzo Deary, yet another import, is executive sous chef at the Hermitage, and he knows what the diners were eating 30 years ago.
They would have seen things like the oysters morning on the menu. They would have seen things like eggs hollandaise on the menu, even on late shift, maybe a little bit of truffle. They would have seen the shrimp cocktails. They would have seen their breaded mushroom stuffed with pate. That would have been the style of entree back then. Very simple styles of cooking, but very, 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 how we say, posh for back then.
I found oysters mornay on an old Hermitage menu, and he was good enough to create it for me.
It's been a while since I've done this, because obviously it's not something you see every day in kitchens now. Still not quite used to this stove yet. We're going to make this mornay sauce, which is basically butter, flour, milk, a little touch of Dijon mustard, and some local vintage aged cheddar that we buy from just up the road at Geraldine from our local growers.
Part of me says it's all wrong having cheese and seafood. Just sort of wrong, but then it's just so right. So, you know, yum. Lorenzo chucks an egg yolk into his cheese sauce and calls it mornay. Then he wilts some spinach and seasons it.
Okay, so that's enough there for the spinach for me. I don't want to wilt, I mean, it's already there, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So we're just going to take that. We're going to get them nice and brown now. Okay, so what's going to happen is all that cheese and all those eggs and all that thick, nice sauce is going to glaze onto the oysters, but it's not going to overcook the oysters, which we don't want to boil the oysters. We just want them to glaze nice and get warm through. Yeah. I'm sure this dish wasn't usually used for oysters, but I wanted to show you some of the silverware that would have been used in those days. So this would usually serve the veg, but I thought it would be quite nice to serve the oysters in, you see.
The flash as, isn't it? The silverware. Mm-hmm. You still use all this stuff?
Yes, once in a while. Mostly the cutlery still gets used in the restaurant. Actually, if you look at your cutlery on the tables, you've got the THC and THC silver.
That crown. So fantastic.
Yep.
That's how an entree should be. It's rich, it's browned, it's got cheese, it's been bubbly. It's bloody good. It's such a good name too, Mornay. It sort of sounds like a ocean eel, but yet it's not. It's just a crime that Mornay sauce is dropped off restaurant menus, and I can't say enough about how delicious anything with Mornay sauce. I mean, these oysters with spinach are just fantastic. Well done, Lorenzo.
Thank you very much.
And after the break, we're going to the old Waikato Caves THC, where I had a very special dining experience when I was 8. The Waitomo Caves Hotel started life in 1903 as a New Zealand government hostel for all the people who flooded along to see the little glowworms down in the caves. It became part of the whole THC network when the THC was set up in 1956. As it became more and more popular, they added the big stone bit down the other end, and that's when a lot of Auckland society used to come down to this hotel for naughty weekends of croquet and a bit of How's Your Father on the front lawn. Maybe not on the front lawn, maybe the croquet on the front lawn, the How's Your Father somewhere else. My visit to this hotel when I was 8 was when I was on a tour of the North Island with my father, Maurice Till, a concert pianist. I had no idea, and I don't think he had either, that it was going to provide me with an experience which would sort of catapult me into a life of food, restaurants and cooking. It was a far cry from my kitchen table. I entered a whole world where it was company policy for the management to consider whether the lighting was kind to the fairer sex, and the chair legs had to be inspected for shoe polish and dust. Since it was schnitzel I ate at the THC all those years ago, we're heading up the road to Hamilton to see Anne Jide, whitebait enthusiast and schnitzel master. She's going to share a few secrets about her schnitzel. You're famous for schnitzel, it seems to me.
My family seem to enjoy it, yes.
Tell me the origin of your recipe. Is it something you've received from somebody else in the family, or is it your own invention?
I think it's just a matter of trial and error over the years and perfecting it to how I liked it and my family enjoyed it. This is quite a big trip for me up your part of the world, because when I was about 9, I loved to share my schnitzel story with anybody who would listen, and Anne was kind of trapped there behind her kitchen bench, and so I thought she was an ideal subject for the story. And there was schnitzel on the menu. I launched into it full of gusto. It had this sort of brown, light gravyish sauce with it, and she just remained underwhelmed constantly by it. Oh, okay.
Which, to this day, I've been wanting to make. Well, I was impressed that she was seasoning that with garlic. She chose to put it in with the egg wash, which was a very, I hadn't thought of that, and so that was a very cunning idea.
I'm going to snip just around the edges here with my kitchen scissors every how far.
All right.
When you cook schnitzel, is the sinew around the edge here shrinks, and it causes the schnitzel to curl up.
I think everybody should do that, and I mean that's a really, that's a really good tip. The best one was definitely the bit of paper in the bottom of the pan.
Now here I've got a piece of baking paper, which I'm going to pop in the bottom of the pan, and this is to eliminate the chances of breadcrumbs sticking to the bottom like they can do in an older pan without the Teflon.
Well, I've got to come clean to everybody here that I'm terrified of this here. Absolutely scared witless.
You don't like parsnips?
I love roast parsnips and I love carrots, but there's something about when they get mashed together. I don't like parsnip and carrot mash at all. And I don't know why I don't like it. I just think it's wrong. It came up in conversation the other day in a room full of people. Half of them nuts for it. Other half, they started hiding under the furniture in case somebody was about to make them eat it. And I'm one of those hiding under the furniture people, but I think it's time that I confronted my parsnip carrot thing, and I'm going to do that, and there's always schnitzel to eat if it doesn't work out, isn't there?
Okay.
So here we go. This is me and carrot and parsnip. Well, the schnitzel looks good.
Found it's tender enough for you.
Plenty tender. This is the tenderest piece of schnitzel that's much tenderer than mine, Anne. Oh, it was a very well crafted schnitzel. It had everything to recommend at the club. Very good. Those European chefs imported by the THC brought all sorts of recipes with them, including crepe recipes. Bronwyn Weston lives in a church that's now an art gallery, and she's been making a fantastic crepe recipe since she was a little girl.
A cousin brought it out from Auckland, and she was a year older than I am, or was at the stage, yeah. And so we started it at 10 and 11 and created it, and then it kind of became the flash dessert of the family for quite a number of years.
Bronwyn's Crepes Normandy, 9 Granny Smith apples, brandy cream, a little lemon zest, and some toasted walnuts straight from her father's tree. Wouldn't you rather be using your paint scraper for that?
Yeah, probably would, but I didn't know that I should actually use it for
You're just going to put that away right now and get your paint scraper. If it's your favourite kitchen implement, you're using it. I think she thought that it was just a bit eccentric or something and didn't really want to display that publicly. But for me, that's the real joy of cooking, and the whole joy of the way everybody's kitchen's got its own personal way of operating, is that people work things out that work best for them.
some lightly toasted walnuts.
I can hear they're toasted. How many layers of crepes we're heading for?
Usually like about 8.
It would be a great dessert for geologists' conference or something, because they could scrape it out and put it there and work out the height before it started to slide crepe on apple. The sort of friction coefficient wouldn't be enough to keep the dessert in an integral whole. There we go. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Bronwyn's crepe cake is a magnificent dessert, absolutely. It's, it's magnificent, that's it. Well, this is the best job, getting to eat this delicious stuff. The crepes, the apples, the walnuts, the orange, and the brandy. I've got goosebumps, it's so delicious. It's fantastic. You're a marvellous crepe cook. And after the break, we're off to my kitchen. Okay, so now I'm going to make a menu, an old school hotel menu for you, something to have a bit of fun at home with. Sort of get out some silver, get out some linen, get out all that sort of carry on and get some friends round and pretend you're back in the 60s or 70s and, well, You could even get dressed up or something, have a bit of an ease up. That shrimp cocktail of Joss's was absolutely fabulous, but I can't get Mornay out of my head from Lorenzo, so I'm going to do Mornay. And I'm going to cook on these scallop shells. I'm going to take my favourite fish, ling, but I'm going to also go flash on it. I'm going to pipe a little bit of mashed potato around the outside, and that's going to be instant mashed potatoes. How good is that? Ling is a great fish. I love it. I think it's sort of New Zealand's multicultural fish in a lot of ways. It's got the front end of a cod and the back end of an eel. It's sort of a very culturally confused fish, but I think it should be our national fish. If there were to be a national fish, I don't know, maybe Karen Walker would work it into the flag or something, a little sort of crochet ling or something in the bottom corner would be nice.
Simmer smoked ling in milk with a little onion. Make a roux. And with hot milk from the poaching liquid and a drop of white wine, whisk up a white sauce. Then flake the fish into the sauce.
Okay, so that's the fish done. Now I'm going to take the scallop shell and I'm going to decorate the edge by piping mashed potato around it. And I'm going to use instant mashed potato for that. So refreshing in these days of organic this, organic that, to find a vegetable that's been made to look like soap flakes. Well, here it is, set to go. Instant mashed potatoes in a plastic bag. There's no way I'm washing a piping bag. Nozzle in the corner. This is just so remarkably easy. Watch. Into a moderate oven for about 20 minutes and they'll be golden brown and bubbling. And schnitzel was bloody good. In fact, I couldn't fault it in any way at all. But I've gone ahead and changed it anyway. I've added mustard to the egg wash. I've added garlic, onion and oregano to the breadcrumb. And I think it's going to be just delicious. Just like Anne, I'm cooking it in vegetable oil, salad and cooking oil, but I've skipped a bit of paper in the bottom because I didn't have a piece big enough. Okay, well, I've been trying to recreate the sauce for an awfully long time, but mostly that involves getting gigantic pots of bones and boiling them down, and I didn't think anybody, well, any of you would be in the slightest bit interested in getting gigantic pots of bones and boiling down. So this is my version of this sauce, but made with a supermarket shopper in mind, so that we can come out with something which is pretty damn delicious and really requires no effort at all. Isn't that kind?
Saute finely minced garlic, onion and mushrooms. Add flour, brown well, and then tip in some stock.
I'm using this stuff from the supermarket because it's just so easy to get hold of, but take care of it. 3 of the first 5 ingredients are salt, so don't add any seasoning until you've tasted it. I wouldn't want to reduce it too much because that'll make it taste like some sort of brackish pond. Oh, and here's tea towel of the week this week. I hope to have a Waitomo Caves THC hotel tea towel, but the closest I could get was a THC down at Mt Cook, home of that oyster mornay. What more could you ask for? This is a great trick with old boiled potatoes in a toasted sandwich maker. Shove them in the toasted sandwich maker, squish them down, whack in some of this garlic and rosemary oil. I love the stuff. I put it on pretty much anything except ice cream. Put it in there, squish it down, leave it for about 10 minutes. They'll be crisp and brown. We've got to line up a toasted sandwich makers here just to check that it works for all brands. Okay, look, I'm going to have to come clean with you here. I can find absolutely no evidence whatsoever of them ever having served crepe Suzette at THC hotels. But I think they should have, so it's on my menu. Rightio, crepe making. Got to get the pan on there. It's nice to have a non-stick pan, or a pan that you trust to be non-stick. Most people claim they have a crepe pan. I'm tempted to claim I've got a crepe pan, but that's just the pan I use to make crepes. It also makes other things like sort of fried bacon and sausages, so that's probably not exactly just a crepe pan by itself. Put it in. The butter needs to sizzle when it goes in. I put too much butter in there because the first crepe is always going to be difficult. Never really expect that one to come out, but to give it a good coating of butter, tip the excess into the batter. That's not going to do any harm. Put it on, and when the butter goes quiet, you know it's ready to put it in. So my recipe, well, it's hardly mine. It's Julia Child's, to be perfectly honest, and I use it because it's such an incredibly good recipe. 1 cup of flour, 2/3 of a cup of milk, 2/3 of a cup of water, 2 eggs, knob of melted butter. If you're making a dessert crepe, a couple of dessert spoons of sugar, pinch of salt. Those pretentiously romantic Frenchmen have got a saying about crepes. They say you should be able to read a love letter through them, and that's a sign of a good one. Well, that one I can see the daylight through, so that's probably a good sign. I don't know about reading a love letter. It'll probably have to be written in a sort of a chunky felt pen to read it through this one, but it's still a very good, thin, tender crepe.
To add the Suzette to crepes, you've got to make a sauce. In a pan, put butter and caster sugar and lightly caramelise. Add the juice of 4 oranges and 1 lemon and simmer briefly. Finally, pour over warmed brandy and set it on fire.
Mind your eyebrows, folks. The brandy burns, mellows it out a bit. Brandy orange crepes, absolutely delicious. Here's the menu I've made to play THC hotels from the 60s and my Kiwi Kitchen. We've got those lovely little things in a scallop shell, that ling. And then we've got the schnitzel with that sauce. Got the potatoes, they're crisp and garlicky. We've got the lovely crepes, they're soft and tender. That really is awfully good. Thanks for coming to my Kiwi Kitchen. Okay guys, you can have something to eat now.